So I want to say thank you to everybody for having me here today. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here at B-Sides Leeds, especially after the extended hiatus that it's been on. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I think first question is probably, who am I? Well, my name's Josh. I've been in and around cybersecurity for about 6 years now, and I am a senior SOC analyst by trade, and outside of work, tend to do a little bit of music and a little bit of freestyle wrestling. I've also been a penetration tester, a junior SOC analyst, of course, a bit of a cybersecurity consultant, and all around just a little bit of a generalist within cybersecurity, so wear many hats. And currently in my role at Vambrace Cybersecurity, I wear all those hats at the same time, but primarily all senior SOC analyst work. So why should you care who I am? Why should you care what I have to say about lying on your CV and all the rest? Well, I had a bit of a strange foothold in the industry. I'd say that I'm probably one of the few people who came into the industry through the job seekers allowance back in the pandemic. I graduated university straight into the pandemic, was not able to get a job at all. So managed to find my way into cybersecurity through a very weird scheme that was running at the time called the Kickstart, which puts you on minimum wage, 25 hours a week, and managed to kind of pivot that into the full-blown career that I have now. But as a result of moving up into a senior SOC analyst position, I've been interviewing people for my team. And as a result of that, I've seen a lot of different people come through from a lot of different cybersecurity backgrounds. And I'm not particularly afraid to give you advice on how you should get your foot in the door, how you should get that first role that other people might not really like very much. So who's this presentation for? Well, primarily everyone. You'll have something in there for employers, something in there for applicants as well. There's going to be something for anybody who's interested in entry-level cybersecurity jobs, but primarily this is going to be geared slightly more towards applicants just because of the nature of this day. So we're going to go through a few character classes. You might notice the AI-generated images. I could not find good royalty-free stock photos to suit this, so you're going to have to put up some AI-generated stuff, but that should be all good. What I mean by a character class is kind of what kind of background you might have come from to get into cybersecurity. And I tend to find there are about 4 of them. You've got university graduates, people who have come through traditional academia, maybe done like a computer science course or a cybersecurity course. People who come from a cyber academy, like Caps Lock is a very good example, something that's a lot more focused on just getting you out the door with a qualification that can get you a job. People who come straight through the industry. I've met a few people who have gone in to cyber apprenticeships straight out of sixth form or anything like that. Or maybe you've gone and gotten your CCNA or some other qualifications that might net you that first role. And some people come in with absolutely no cyber experience at all, or no technical experience for that matter. And there are benefits and drawbacks to each of these that we're going to go through here. So university graduates tend to be very excellent generalists. They've had 3 years to learn all the fundamentals of computing, cybersecurity, all the rest. And as well as that, I think one of the few genuine benefits to coming through traditional academia these days, as opposed to anything else, is that you've proven your ability to learn over the course of an extended period of time. So everyone who's graduating university is going to be at least a certain standard to be able to get in through the door. As well as that, because you've had 3 years minimum, basically, of doing assignments, dissertations, exams, you tend to have very solid written skills, which you might be thinking that's maybe not a massive part of the job. But people often ask me, well, Josh, what kind of programming language should I learn to get into cybersecurity or something like that? And I always say the language that I use the most in my job is English. Having the ability to write technically, having the ability to write clearly, concisely, comes in very, very handy when you're getting that first job, and also comes in handy in your career progression. People who come from a university background as well tend to be very confident in their ability, which can be a little bit of a con as well. Having that incorrect perception of the industry and where you fit into it, especially as somebody who's only really had theoretical practice with all of the concepts that you'll be coming across within the industry, can be a little bit of a downside. And I've seen people come in and be expecting that they should be earning like £30,000 a year in their first entry-level job straight out of university, and it's just not feasible. Really, you need to temper your expectations if you're coming in from this kind of background. Moving on, though, to a bit of a newer kind of way into the industry, you've got people who come through these learning academies. And these tend to be very good courses that are being focused and curated by industry leaders with a very heavy focus on employability. So you're much more likely to be learning the practical skills that you might be coming across when you actually get into the roles that you're looking to get into. These tend to give you a very solid baseline understanding of security concepts that you can build off, and it's a lot closer to the industry, as I said, than any kind of traditional academia that we see through university. However, because you don't have the full 3 years to really kind of hone in your skills on, the more basic parts of computing and of cybersecurity, say like the fetch, decode, execute cycle, certain networking concepts I've seen people not really have nailed down. You might have a bit of a limited extended knowledge of computing as a whole and of cybersecurity as a whole, but that's largely going to depend on the academy that you've joined. Your written skills as well, due to it not being as long of a course, written skills are going to be largely dependent on your personal background and what kind of things you've done in the past. We have somebody on our team who used to be an underwriter for a large insurance firm, and so his written skills are exceptional, but other people might not have come from such a background, and as such, your written skills might suffer. And as well as that, this kind of career progression can sometimes stunt your career progression and leave you at the, I'll say, the lower rungs of the salary ladder for a little while, just due to the way that the loans are structured for these kinds of courses. So you might find yourself earning a little bit less for a little bit longer until you can access those higher paying roles. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a very solid way to get your foot in the door. Coming through the industry first gets you very early exposure into the industry. So people who come straight out of college or sixth form, people who just get a certification and they go straight in from there. You'll get years of hands-on experience before any of your colleagues will, and that'll give you a lot of very fast progression if you're early in your career. However, your written skills, once again, are going to be a bit of a mixed bag, and your skill set will be narrowed based entirely on what you've been doing through your day-to-day role, basically. As well as that, because of your inexperience, you might find that you have to be trained a little bit longer, and that's something to consider for employers. Training's going to be a little bit longer due to the inexperience. And as well as that, due to that kind of narrowed skill set, you may be less suited to certain roles and require a bit more training when you reskill into those roles later on in your career. But kind of stripping away any certifications at all, we can take a look at people who come in with absolutely no cyber experience, who actually can be quite beneficial to an organization. My partner manages a pub in the center of York, and their previous hiring practice was that they would only hire people who had never worked in a bar a day of their lives. And the reason for that is that they had no bad habits. They knew nothing about how to mix the drinks. They knew nothing about anything, really. So you could build them up according to the business processes at your organization. It's also a lot cheaper for companies to hire people with no cyber experience. And I find that both parties tend to benefit from that, because not only are you as an applicant or an employee earning a lot of very valuable experience, but also the employer is going to be able to employ you for a little bit less and get a good amount of value out of you. And as well, coming from absolutely nothing, you've got lots and lots and lots of room to grow. Cons of all this is that you potentially got no proven ability to work in cybersecurity, and you might get a decent portion of the way into that first role and find that you're still not really feeling it. And that may be due to struggling with a very steep learning curve, coming from a very limited background. And as well as that, additional time is obviously going to be required for training. 2 seconds, just going to have some water. So, which one of these kind of backgrounds to come from is best? Well, frankly, none of them. Each one of them has its own unique benefits that you might be able to leverage. But if you're an applicant, I think you should use this information that we've just gone through to really understand your flaws and kind of where you might have come from in the industry. Temper those expectations, because I know that when I got into the industry, I thought that I was on it, and then I did one hack the box and realized that was absolutely not the case. I did not know what I was doing. So temper your expectations and also know your trajectory. Understand where you're going to be headed in the long term. Are you looking to manage a team? Are you looking to build out your own business one day? What is your career path going to look like if you enter at a certain point? And as well as that, if you're an employer looking to implement some entry-level positions into your organization, when you're hiring, really focus on the team fit of that employee and the aptitude for their aptitude for learning, I think, is the most important thing. Also, have a think about your organization. If you don't have any entry-level positions available, have a think about which jobs might be suitable for entry-level personnel. We could always do with getting more people into the industry. And when you're thinking about which jobs are suitable for entry-level personnel, have a think about what base level, bare minimum skill set an employee needs to be able to perform that task. You might find that it's a lot less skilled than you actually think. So what kind of jobs should you be looking for? I'm going to pause here for a second so that you can screenshot this if you need to. But these are the keywords that I would suggest you put into any of your searches for jobs whilst you're making that first look for entry-level positions. Associate is one that comes up again and again and again. And you might not have every single qualification that they're asking for, but we'll touch on how you can get around that in a second. So how can you get one of these jobs? Well, my advice is always to get your foot in the door. That's the first thing that you should be trying as hard as possible to do. Do whatever you can to get that first face-to-face interview. Because barring exceptions, most people don't really care a great deal about the experience level of somebody in an entry-level position. They much more care about team fit. How are you going to work with the rest of the team? How do you fit into that company culture? You know, are you the right person for this role? Are you the right person for this job? And don't be afraid to get creative with the ways in which you'll get your foot in the door, because I guarantee you, if you don't, then somebody else will. So how do you get creative on your CV? Well, first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying that it works. I was speaking to somebody that I hold in very high regard in the industry quite recently, and I was running through some positions that were kind of entry level with him and asking kind of if they would be suitable for somebody with very little experience in the past, and how would you get around not having the experience? And he said quite honestly with me, get creative on the CV. They did it, and they've progressed a very long way in the industry, despite having a relative inexperience going into it. So it does work, and I'll caveat that by saying that you should only be getting creative about things that you actually know about. Because if you can talk for hours and hours and hours about networking, then that's absolutely fine. But if you can't, please, 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 for the love of God, do not tell somebody that you were a network engineer, because you will be pulled up on technical details and people will ask about your experience in your last role. What was it that you did? What's this specific thing? If you can't answer those questions, they're going to see through you immediately. Also, if people want to know what you did in your last role, no, I signed an NDA. Signed an NDA with my previous employer. I can't talk about it. I'm sorry. How can you explain the gap in your CV? Sorry, signed an NDA. I can't. But I did. But I do know about these things and these things. Focus on your technical skills as opposed to your previous experience. That's my advice. As well as that, if you can't seem to find any references from previous companies that you might have worked at, on occasion, friends will make excellent references. Just make sure that this friend can talk about what it is that you want to, excuse me, what it is that you want to be going into, and make sure that they're aware that they're going to be receiving a phone call from somebody, because you don't want the creativity to fall flat on its face. And as well as that, some companies will go under and some companies just lack an HR department. I'm sure that we've all seen the recent meltdowns that have been going on at twitter.com. And it became quite clear to a lot of people after, certain people were just being fired and they had to literally tweet the CEO to figure out whether or not they were still employed with Twitter. Became quite clear that Twitter no longer had an HR department, and thus nobody to confirm nor deny whether or not you in fact worked there. So something to keep in mind when you're writing about your previous experience. But aside from lying on your CV, there are other ways to get a foot in the door. For example, the biggest one is just making friends. Get talking to people, because the number of times that positions will come up and somebody within the company will say, well, actually, I know someone who wants to get into cybersecurity. Could you give them a call? Could you just have a chat with them, see if they're the right fit for the job? The more friends that you have, the more likely it is that that kind of thing will come back your way. As well as that, talk to the hiring manager. It can be a little bit frustrating for hiring managers sometimes getting loads of messages from people, but the worst thing that you'll be told is just to, apply normally and wait for a call back. Best case scenario, you get something back from the hiring manager and you might be able to swindle a job out of that. Also, talk to recruiters, because they're here to help you. That's their entire job, is just getting you employed within cybersecurity or whichever field you want to go into. So make sure that you're talking to recruiters and don't be put off by any fees or anything like that. Because realistically, if this is what it takes to get your foot in the door, then it's fully worth it. Also, use social media. Make posts, let people know that you're looking for a job, let people know that you're skilled in this area and that area and this area and that area. Message people who are kind of influencers in the LinkedIn space, see if they can help you out, because you never know, you might just find somebody who's willing to help and willing to kind of get you in there. Also, just start working on a project and document it as you go, because oftentimes people will be interested in what it is that you're doing, and just reach out to you or talk to anyone that you can about that project that you're working on and see if that's suitable for a position that you might be looking at. Giving yourself a big title on LinkedIn also helps. I received, I think, 3 job offers in the week when I listed myself as a senior SOC analyst on LinkedIn. So sometimes all it takes is a little bit of a specific title or a little bit of specific experience that people might be looking for to actually get your foot in the door there. So how might you secure the job when you actually do get that interview, and when you've kind of gotten very creative with your way in? How do you actually get through that interview and get the job? Well, there's no easy way to say it, but you just got to be fun to talk to. I did not know how to talk to people when I first started looking for cybersecurity jobs. I remember being a little 19-year-old sat in his room, not fully grasping the concept of small talk. And there are resources out there. And if you're unfortunate enough to be in my position, know the man who's on the right-hand side of this photo. There's a YouTube channel out there called Charisma on Command that sometimes does some good videos around how you might be able to talk to people in a nice kind of way. And you can learn to make small talk. You just got to start actually speaking to strangers. There are cashiers out there, there are baristas, there are bartenders. There are lots of people out there in the world who are willing to tell you kind of little bits about their day. You just have to go up to and ask them, how's your day going? What kind of shift are you on today? How's the shift been? Things like that will get you into the flow with being able to talk to anybody, basically. Also, just know your stuff. If you're going in for a specific role and you maybe don't have all the experience, then make sure that you know what it is that you're going to be talking about and come prepared in that sense to make sure that you can speak on that topic for an extended period of time. Because realistically, all that an interview is it's a test that you are the right person for that position. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, as well, because there's nothing worse than not knowing something and then trying to lie your way out of it, trying to really kind of accentuate your knowledge to an extent that just isn't entirely correct. It's perfectly fine to say, actually, I don't know. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Or actually, I don't know, but I'll go away and Google it after this meeting, if that's all right. Perfectly acceptable answers to any questions. Come prepared. Make sure that you're ready for that interview, and ask questions. I was told to always have 2 questions in my back pocket for the end of an interview, because you will be asked if you have any questions. So my 2 go-tos are, where do you see the business in 3 years, or maybe 5 years if you're looking long-term? And how do I fit into that business strategy in that time if I was brought on? How can I help you achieve your goals with this business? People like to see that you can commit to that role. And what if you don't get the job? Well, it's absolutely fine, because there are so many more out there. Cyber is only growing, and there are loads of roles being posted almost daily. And it's okay to not be right for the role, because realistically, if you didn't get the job, then it's likely that the employer just didn't think that you were the right fit, or they were probably looking for a very specific person for that role. And it's probably for the best that you didn't get it, because it's better that you just don't get it. You're not miserable in a position that you're not quite right for. And you can actually look and find something that is going to be a better fit for you. As well as that, yes, it's about being really, really good. And yes, it's about having all the experience and all the rest. But also, it's a numbers game. The more jobs you apply to, the more likely it is for you to actually get that role. And so just keep at it, because remember, the only way is up. So thank you so much. Happy to take any questions now. If you don't get a chance to talk to me now, you can track me down on LinkedIn. I've been tagged in all the B-Sides Leads posts. And if you really want to list me as a reference and you don't have anyone else to list, by all means do so. Just message me on LinkedIn and let me know first.